Let's do random number worksheet number 1 together. For the first exercise, I need to rewrite my formula that I'm asking you to write, my algebraic statement actually. Num equals math.floor. And then a big set of parentheses where we're going to put R&D times high minus low plus 1. See the formula up here that I'm using as a guide? R&D is next with an empty set of parentheses, I'll explain that later, times, and you're allowed to fill in high minus low plus 1, but don't simplify it yet. So I need an inner set of parentheses there, and high minus low plus 1 should be written as 4 minus 1 plus 1. Because in this problem, the number 1 is low and high is 4. I don't know for what reason in some game, let's just pretend there needs to be a random number rolled with a 4-sided dice, and the number has to be a whole number, an integer between 1 and 4. So this line of code would do that, and this line of code would store that number into a variable named num, which, I don't know, messagebox.show or something will happen to num later on. Now this can be simplified, so let's do that as our final answer here. Num equals, neatly writing as neatly as I can with this mouse. You probably have neater handwriting on your worksheet. The simplest I can do here is math.floor R&D times, and 4 minus 1 plus 1 simplifies to the number 4. You end that parenthesis. Oh no, I messed up. On that first line of code, there, I should have had a plus 1. Because plus 1, a low is 1. So please, please, please squeeze in a plus 1 there. And anyway, that plus 1 is still here in the final statement. Notice that we have parentheses where we have them. There's no way I can simplify that. You cannot do 4 plus 1 and simplify that to 5. That will not mathematically be correct. Let's do number 2 since I was unclear on number 1. Let's do this one together. For number 2, low is 1 and high is 10. So I'm generating a random number here between 1 and 10. Well, let's just pretend we want to store that random number in the variable num. So num equals math.floor parentheses R&D empty parentheses times, and I'd like you to show me that high minus low plus 1 goes in those inner parentheses, and then you end the parentheses and you do a plus low, which is again plus 1 out at the tail end. And I'd like you to just make a note where low equals 1 and high equals 10. I know that low is spelled with a W, and I know that high is GH, but I'm just being short and sweet here on this worksheet. Okay, the final answer there, number 2 then, is again num equals math.floor, and I'm being a little sloppy here. There should not be a space after the R in floor, because this set of parentheses is right there after the word floor, because floor is a method. And R&D times the simplified expression there, 10 minus 1 plus 1 simplifies to the number 10, but we still have a plus 1 outside of the outer parentheses, so there's your final answer for that one. Let's explain how this really works. The computer works from inside the parentheses out, and when the R&D function, it's called a function in Visual Basic in this situation, when R&D executes, the computer generates a number between 0 and 1. Actually between 0 and 0.9999, but let's just pretend it's between 0 and 1 for now. So the number might be something like 0.5. Let's keep it simple, 0.5. We are taking 0.5 times 10, which simplifies to 5. And then we are math.flooring that. What the floor command does is if there was a decimal point here, like 0.2, it would chop it off, leaving just the 5. Well, we didn't really have a decimal point there, so I should redo this example because it doesn't really make the point that I want to make. So let's start over again here in this example. Let's pretend that R&D comes up with a number 5.9. And no, it can't do that. It's a number between 0 and 1. So let's pretend that R&D is 0.59. That is a possible R&D value. 0.59 times 10, that just moves the decimal one place to the right. So we end up with 5.9 after that multiplication. And then because of these parentheses, before we add +1, the math.floor method executes. And what floor does, as I explained, it chops off any decimal places that you have. It truncates the decimal places. It does not round 5.9 up to 6. It truncates. So that number that's left at this stage of our explanation is 5. And we now have 5 plus 1, and that simplifies to 6. Now I ask you, is 6 an integer between 1 and 10? Yes, it is. Any number that we would have originally plugged in here for R&D, any decimal number between 0 and 1 on the number line, any number like 0.2, 0.88, 0.3, 0.999, 0.0001, any decimal number between 0 and 1, when plugged in for R&D, would have led to an integer between 1 and 10. By using math.floor that truncates decimal places and chops them off, and the rest of the math, the multiplication, and the parentheses, it always works. It's a nice handy formula here to memorize for the rest of your computer software development career. I'll do another one that's a little trickier here because low is not the number 1 in the problem 3. So let's do this one more problem and then you can finish the rest for your own learning. Here in problem number 3, I have to write out num equals math.floor parentheses R&D, empty parentheses with R&D because it's a function, times high minus low plus 1. Well, in this case, low is equal to 6, and high is equal to 15. So high minus low plus 1 is really the same thing as saying 15 minus 6 plus 1. Then don't forget, outside of this outer set of parentheses, you need to do plus low, which in this case is 6. So we need to have plus 6 here. That's the first step of exercise 3. Simplifying it, I type num equals math.floor R&D, and 15 minus 6 plus 1 simplifies to 10. And then I still have a plus 6 outside of the parentheses. Now here's an exercise for you to do in your own time. Plug in a decimal number for R&D, I don't know, like 0.73. Multiply it by 10, chop off the decimal places that you'll get, and then add 6. Whatever you get as an answer to all that, it's guaranteed to be a number between 6 and 15. Guaranteed. I'll give you $10 if you can come up with an R&D value between 0 and 1 that does not end up turning into an integer between 6 and 15. Please do the rest of the worksheet for your own learning and understanding.